Hello and welcome to my cave. My name is Damien. Welcome to my channel. I appreciate you coming to check me out. The focus of this channel will be just crafting, the crafts that I do. I'm really super into it, and maybe you are too. And I hope I can share some ideas, some things to maybe improve your own crafting or inspire you to do some crafting of your own. I like to keep things pretty chill. I'm by no means a professional crafter. I just enjoy doing it. It's a hobby, and I have been getting some really good response to the work I've been doing on social media, and my wife thinks that I should be out here talking about what I do, so here I am. So let's just get right into it. I completed this stone house here. Has the thatched roof, stone walls. I did make this interior playable, so you can actually remove the whole house. Interior playable floor space. But we're going to start off with this build here, or at least I'm going to talk about the steps I used when creating this build. I've already built it. I'm not going to build another one just like it, but I will show you what I did to get the thatch and on the roof and the stonework on the walls. Today we'll start with how I did my door and how I often make doors. Just a little bit of a different approach than maybe other people. If you find it helpful, let me know. If you have any questions, seriously, post them in the comments. I will answer any and all questions for sure. Well, let's get into it. Okay. So for this section, I will show you one of the methods I use for making doors. So I just got a block here I've cut. You know, this is roughly the size of the door. I am making this door a little smaller because of the build is a little smaller. It's just an example, but it's still within. I essentially just use a mini for scale. So that's a decent sized door. For this little hut, this is an adequate door size. I think I went with I'm like 1.25 inches. Let's see, 1.25 inches by 1.75 inches roughly. I would probably normally go, well, I think it's about right. I may go closer to 2 inches on the height on a normal door and 1.5 inches wide, but it's pretty typical, 1.25 inches by 1.75 inches. So anyway, there's my block essentially. So my next move, I went ahead and used my Proxxon here, really thin, got real close, and just removed the finish, you know, that's on the insulation board, so that I've got a good rougher texture here. Take my wire brush. I'm going to go ahead and lay in some wood grain on the front here. Now I like to, if you put the brush straight in and dig, you're going to pull chunks out. I like to lay the brush sort of almost flat against it with a bit of an angle, maybe a 30-degree, and press down with my thumb, and that'll create tracks. So I just get between those two tracks, hit it a couple times. See, I still lost a chunk there, but that'll be okay. And there I've got my wood grain in the door. Right, so now I'll get onto my cutter here, and I'll go about halfway deep, maybe not even quite that. So this is a not quite a 1/2 inch thick piece now, but you see about how thick it is there. You know, I'll measure it for good measure. I'm looking at 6/8. Yeah, 6/8. For those of us in America. So I'm going to take off the part that's wood grain. I'll cut that a little thinner. Okay, and I'm just going to remove that front face off. Turn my heat up a little bit here. Right. So I have this piece, the block still, and then I have this piece, the wood grained. Now I want to get that effect. I'm going for that effect where it's like, you know, these boards Although I'm not going to do this style of bracing on this build, but I have these individual boards here that are, you see the gap between them, you see they're kind of aged and weathered. That's what I like, that look. This is what I do to get that. Again, I've removed the wood grained face off of this block. Then I'm going to cut this down to just shy of 1/4 inch boards, so to speak. So because it's not quite, it wasn't quite 1.25 inches, I'll go like, you know, just a little short of 1/4 inch, and I'll just start cutting this into planks. One kind of smaller one there. We'll see if it goes in, because if you spread these out a little bit, I might make up the difference on that and the gaps between the boards, and that'll be fine. So next move is, so I have these planks. I'm going to just knock the edges down. I've got some very fine grit sandpaper. I don't want to, I mean, these will snap very easily, so just kind of get in there and scuff. I'm scuffing these edges just to break them, so they're a little rounded and not crisp and clean. I'll get the bottoms too. I'll sort of round them off a little bit. I'll tell you another method I might use. I might take my knife, and I get in close and I just sort of make little cuts in the end of the board there. I'm going to get that broken sort of weathered wood, and that might go to, I'll face that towards the bottom of the door because it gets a lot of wear down there at the bottom. So again, just break all the edges and then go to the next one with the sandpaper, very lightly scuffing. I don't need to really dig in there at all, just kind of rounding them off a little bit, make them softer and more natural looking, like they have expanded and contracted. I'm just doing tiny, just right in the end there. I'm just kind of busting up the end of that, so it makes it sort of frayed, I guess you'd say, or broken apart. Again, it kind of looks junky. That's the technical industry term there. Make it junky. Make it junky. Okay, it's getting weird. I guess this is a small detail, but I'm sanding where I'm gripping it. That's kind of where I'm hitting it. Then I move it down, hit it there, move it down, hit it there. If I'm holding it here and I'm still hitting it up there, it really wouldn't. I mean, these are they're flexible, but it takes very little to snap that off. It's at this point, it's very flimsy. It will become, when we coat it and paint it and glue it and all those lovely things, it will become very durable. But this might be a step that not everybody feels like they need to do. That's okay. If you leave it sharp edge, they'll look like, you know, if you're going for a newer build maybe. So this is what we're working on here is a very old, decrepit, weathered look, grimy. But if you were going for something newer or classier in a city, you might leave those edges clean and sharp. It might be well milled lumber, freshly milled lumber. Definitely not my aesthetic. This is like just my base. So this piece won't even be seen when I'm all said and done, but I am going to use the patented, not so much, but I am going to use the black paint Mod Podge mix called the Black Magic Craft Magic Sauce. Jeremy over at Black Magic Craft. I really got so much of what I do from his channel and others, but Jeremy at Black Magic Craft would definitely be my YouTube mentor in a lot of the stuff that I do. And the black paint Mod Podge base coat stuff, this stuff is great and totally is, at least that's where I got the idea. He calls it the Black Magic Craft base coat. It's, you know what, I have a wet brush here, so I'm not getting there we go. Just lay it on. I want this to be durable, one, and two, I want it to be dark, because those boards are going are going to have a bit of a gap. Now, I don't think I have enough paint. I just made this fresh batch of the Mod Podge black paint mix, and I put too much Mod Podge in the jar and probably not enough black paint. It's pretty gray. I do want it black, more black than this. As I use it, I'll get it down a little bit and I'll add more paint, but I will say that this works better if it's darker than this. So I may have to do a second coat because I really want, or I may just put a coat of black over this because I really want this to be black. As I lay these boards on here, I will leave a bit of a gap between them, and I don't want to see green board or whatever back there. Because I'm largely a patient person, but sometimes I'm a little impatient. If I can cut corners or speed things up where I can, I do. And this is one of those areas where I do sometimes, if it's not important, which this is an important piece. I got this, I actually bought this for doing emboss work on paper crafts but I mean, there's lots of, you could use a hairdryer. This is a heat gun, heat tool. It gets really hot, so it will melt the foam, which I actually use in other ways to get other effects. I've done like a acid etched look and just like, old stone. It does a cool texture thing, but I'm not doing that for this. I just want to blow my boards away. I just want to quickly dry this up a little bit. This gets really hot. I mean, it'll burn you. It'll set fires to paper. So I'm going to keep a distance and I'm just going to pass over quickly. I can see it drying. I don't want to get close. I'll show you. If I get close to this thing, it quickly begins to melt that. You see how quickly that will melt and deform your foam. Which again has qualities that are desirable for some things. It does make natural forms for earth or snow or acid or burned or whatever. And it also makes the foam really hard. It almost acts as a hardening. But I don't want to deform this piece. So I'm just drying the Mod Podge quickly. And I've got it on my hands. I'm not a crafter who cares too much about having messy hands. I always have paint on my hands and on my clothes. And that's just the way it is. Some things will never change. Alright, as I said, I'll hit it with a little black. Very little amount. I don't like to waste. That's even more than I'm going to need right there. Alright, same brush. Dry it off a little bit. Actually, dry it off quite a bit. Do the old Bob Ross on that. Smacking the brush out. Alright, thanks Bob. Big love. And just to black it out. That's all. This is barely going to be anything that's even seen. I'm just going to make sure I hit it all over so nothing is seen, but this is just background business, so it's not for show. Just little tiny bits. Happy little brush strokes. Same thing. This dries super fast. Hit it with the heat tool. Again, you could use a hairdryer probably. I never have. I just happen to have this, again, from my paper crafting, and it works wonders. Dries things especially this cheap acrylic paint. It dries super fast. I'm going to blow all my boards away over there. Moving around. And like that, it's dry. Perfect. Okay. Now, I'm just going to lay these on here. Again, remember I damaged the edges, the ends of these, so make sure those are all going the same direction. And I have forgotten to turn on and warm up my hot glue gun, so I will be right back. Oh, coffee, nectar of the gods. While we are waiting for the glue gun, I'd just like to talk about this amazing palette, paint, whatever, crafting tray. 6 of these in a package at the dollar store. 6 of these. I have 5 in a drawer that are squeaky clean because I just like to reuse. So when I'm done crafting for the day, I clean this all up. I mean, it's, I mostly clean it up, but 6 of them for $1 at the dollar store. That is awesome. All right, my babies, we have hot glue. So again, I have my door, basically, not frame, but the door, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. This is the base for my door layout, all blacked out. I have the planks that I've cut. Again, I have the broken, weathered bottoms. I'll put that at the bottom of the door. So this will be my bottom. Call that hot glue. Lay in a strip. I'm going to put this first board right up against this far edge of the door. I'll level it on the table. Make sure it's nice and level and squarely on there. A little extra hot glue, it rubs off. Let's get that out of the way, just in case it might not be in the way at all. All right, so that first board is on there. And then I just start stacking them in. I'm not going to press it hard up against each other. Again, I want a little bit of a gap, just the smallest little amount of a gap between them. You can see that. I might do something like so. You can't really see back there, but it's dark in there, so that's why I wanted that to be blacked out. But a little bit of a gap. Again, that's going to be natural. If you look at old barn gates and things like that, you get that. Through expansion and contraction and deterioration, boards start to kind of move apart and pull apart. It may have been nice and neat and plumb and clean at one time, but now there's just, it's wearing, and I'm already excited about what's going on right here. I like how that one kind of got a little bent. I think it's the one I was play bending and it kind of curved, so I like that actually. Happy little accidents. I seem to be channeling the spirit of Bob Ross here this morning. Lay in the next one. There are lots of really quick ways to get a similar effect to this. Let's go back to this chunk. I could have taken that block that I had, and I could have, I've got this old ice pick. You can. Some people you take the knife and you cut a small edge, and then you go in with a pencil. And you get a similar effect there. And I like it, and I do that sometimes. But at the end of the day, I just don't think, at least from my experience, I just don't think you get as authentic a look as when you actually make little boards and build the door like you would build the door. And for me, this method is quick and easy and perfectly acceptable, but I trade off quick and easy very often for aesthetic, and for that I want that visceral, visual, realistic look. And I'm not using nails and whatnot obviously here, but I have made boards, and those cuts are clean and deep. As I said, I'm sorry, I also had this ice pick. So I've used the ice pick before. You can just go in and draw lines, start off with the knife, make a little groove. This gets it pretty good. I use this instead of the pencil, the pen, and stuff like that. That's not bad. It's not terrible, but not my preferred method. If you want to be quick, then ask about that. Maybe I'll show you how to do that more. I know lots of people have already done it. There are no shortage of videos out there. Look at my list of channels that I follow, and you'll find a whole slew of absolutely brilliant crafters out there showing all kinds of other ways to do what I'm doing here. So there we have it. Those are all of the boards attached to the block. Now, that's not a door yet, obviously, but it's a start. So I will go back and now fit this with my black Mod Podge. Get all the water out of the brush. I don't mind it a little damp, but I don't want it soggy wet for this because I really want to get it good. Now I'm also don't want it totally dry because I don't want to lose all the wood grain. So I'm just gonna, not a dry brush, but I'm gonna almost a dry brush. Actually, it is a pretty dry brush, this stuff on here, because I don't want to lose that detail in the wood grain. Now you might even paint these boards beforehand, before even gluing them down, just so you can make sure you get in between those there. But you know, that's an option. You're just hiding anything, any green. You know, if you're using blue or pink, whatever the board color you're using, I don't want to see that. But it doesn't have to be like, you know, I'm going to hit this with many more layers of paint, so it doesn't have to be totally blacked out. Just a good coating, a good thin coat of this stuff goes a long way. Let me move that into frame so you can actually see what I'm doing. Just dipping the tips in, kind of getting most of it off on the edge of the jar. I don't want any big blobs of paint or, you know, Mod Podge on this that I have to move around and mess with. It's okay at the beginning, but yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure how well you can see, but you still see all the wood grain in there, and I haven't lost any of that. And it is covered, and voila. That can sit and dry. Now for this one, I'm going to do something a little different than I did the other door. I'm going to take 2 additional little wooden planks there and create the cross beams. I already have a bunch of these. See if I have any that are detailed here. There we go. That was pretty busted up. I don't know that I did. I had these that I was working on, and I changed my mind on the build, and so here, this looks good. Yeah. And I keep them in this amazing Pringles container. Whoa. All right. Now this is pretty raggedy, but that's okay. And I'm going to show you to. Actually, you know, I will dry this real quick so I can glue that on. A little bit of extra paint in the crack. I'll blow it out. I think that's dry enough to glue. Okay. So these are going to be these bracing bars. I don't necessarily want them super clean straight across. I'm going to give them a little bit of a jaunty tilt to the side. You know, I'm going to glue it on here this time. And I'll lay that in. Not quite true. Just a little bit of a angle. Whoever built this door, there were no craftsmen. They were just hammering something together to cover the hole in the front of their house. They don't care too much. Probably just some scrap lumber laying around or whatever, sticks and boards. And easily enough, I just remove the excess. Voila, there's one. I might get in here with sandpaper just to break up this. Try sanding with the right side there, just to break off those little sharp corners that I just made. All right, and we'll do that same thing again. Give it a little bit of a different angle there, like so. Voila. Cut those extra pieces off. Hot glue on the knife. Boom. I like it. All right. Same thing. Coat those now. A little bit of BMC sauce. Too much. This board's actually kind of falling apart. I like that this bottom one, it's all, I think I hit it too hard with the wire brush and really gouged it, and it's kind of coming undone. So I would want to be careful because I don't want it to come undone. You know, it is really falling apart. I think I'll just give a little spot of hot glue right there just to tack it down neatly for me. Remove the excess, just make sure that doesn't fall off. Tiny little bit here on the bottom edge. There you go. That's essentially the door. Already looking pretty cool, I think. You know, and you can go lots of directions with this. So this could be, you know, you could have varying degrees of the age of the wood of this door. I'm going to go for an extremely aged door. So I want this to almost turn out to be a slightly light brown, but mostly gray, like aged wood. Old wood turns gray mostly. If you go out and look at old wood, old wooden things. So that's where we're going to end up with that. Or, and again, the example of my little hut, at some point, somebody ambitious did actually go in and paint that door red. So that door was painted red at one time, sometime back in time. But then it's worn down. You know, you see my bottom edges are all dirty and grimy. And so it's an old paint job. So I just did a dry brush with some red and kind of rubbed it and messed it up with my thumb. And, you know, painting is really everything in this craft. For the most part, how you make it look. You can make some really silly stuff look pretty amazing. But there, that's the basic of the door. So I started getting into said painting, but I could paint that a color. I could make it look like newer wood. I could choose it to make it look like, you know, different kinds of wood. I could go for a darker walnut or a more sort of a auburn cherry look, you know. Lots of stuff. And for this, I'm going for just old, probably pine or something. That's pretty dry. Okay. I'm going to start off with a base layer of golden brown. Don't need much paint in there. That will probably do it. I'm going to get a clean, dry brush. Lay a piece of paper towel out for my dry brushing. Now let's go with this bad boy. Alright, just gonna wet the edges, rub off a lot of it. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, we're good. This isn't a totally dry brush, but it's a pretty dry brush. I don't need to thoroughly bury this thing in paint. I'm going back into where I rubbed it on the paper towel and picking some of that up. There's still plenty of paint on the paper towel. I don't need to re-dip. For all my people out there who like the sound of brushing, there's the brushing sounds for you. I know I do. I'm just going to build this up slowly as to not lose my details. better to go slow and build things up than to just start slapping paint on and having too much. I mean, if I was, say I got here, I just go in and rub some off with my hand. It's still wet, so I can still kind of rub some paint off, which I do all the time actually, because especially on a painted door, I would go in and rub out paint that I just put on there. So as to give it that worn spot, especially around the handle, maybe places where people would be touching it a lot, you're going to get the colors being rubbed off. All right, that already looks pretty freaking good. All right, that's where we're at. Golden brown. We're getting there. Pretty good, pretty good. I probably can reuse this brush if I get it good and dry and make sure I pretty much get all of this. Is a junk brush, so get all the paint I can out of there. Because dry brushing does use up your brushes. If you got a lot of dry brushing to do in a day, it can really, I don't want to go throwing this in my water jar. Let's make sure it's pretty dry, but we'll just dry it up a little bit. Alright, and now I'm going to go in with a little bit of Craft Smart. I use suede. There are other options. Let's see what we got here. That's a fawn. It's a little bit more red. I mean, that's not quite what I want. But I like the suede. I like the Craft Smart suede. There are other brands, other colors that are similar. It's in the brown family, but it's almost a gray. This bottle's almost empty. Just a couple drops. Gimme! There we go. That'll be plenty of paint. Alright, but you see, I mean, next to that golden brown, you can see that's in the brown family. But if you see it with just the black, you can see how it's almost a gray as well. But that's going to be the magic layer when it comes to this aged wood door. And this is super dry brush, really dry. I'll load a bunch of paint on just to get the paint well into the brush, but then I'm going to pull almost all that off. I still got a lot of golden brown in there. I may have to switch brushes. Let's see. Won't be a big deal. Might be okay. So dry brushing in there, hitting everything. This isn't a highlight. This is what's aging the wood now. It's really going to give it to that gray aged wood look. Sometimes if I'm not sure if I have too much paint on, I might hit the edge first just to make sure I'm a good level of paint, because I don't want to get in there and hit it at this point. I could rub some of that off, but it really is not going to be the best. So load it up, dry it off, and maybe I find a spot I know I won't see and hit that. See, that would have been too much on the door probably. Get it everywhere in there. I don't want to make sure I get down in these little seams. Get all the edges. A little bit too much on the edge. Rub that off. I don't want any bright highlights with this. This isn't a highlight coat, so I don't want any edges to get bright with this just yet. This door, there we go. Oh yeah, oh yeah. See, that's what I'm absolutely going for right there. That is that aged wood color look. Like it. I really like how this turned out here. I love that deep cut in the wood. The wood is really falling apart there. All right, and then lastly, a little bit of this isn't a clean. This is vanilla. I like vanilla. It's not the white that I use for everything. It's not a bright white. I don't want a bright white. I like the vanilla because it's a creamier. I mean, it's white, but you see in the bottle, it's not super bright. It's just that creamy white. And I'll make sure my brush is nice and clean. And this is going to be my highlight dry brush. Load the paint on and wipe. I mean, really get all the paint off of there. You don't want it. Almost no paint left on that brush. And then I'm going to start at the top and stroke quickly, not hit the top edges of things, because this is where the light's coming in. This is the light direction coming in, just hitting the top edge. I may have actually over cleaned my brush. Pretty much want it totally clean, but not totally clean, obviously. There we go, that's better. This is a detail you only see when you look close, but I like to look close. If you're afraid of this detail, you really can skip it. That door looks pretty good without it, and you barely even notice it, but you may just see the top edges of things. Gives the impression the light is coming down, which it is right now. I've got my light here. There you go. That's the basic door. I'm a big fan. Super quick, super easy. Not as easy again as maybe other methods, but the one I like because I feel like it looks the best. Some people do resin casting. I totally respect that. It's very cool too. I just am poor and work with what I have. So we need some way to open and close this door now. We need some sort of a handle. Couple things I do. For this one being so broken down and poor, I don't imagine that this, oh, you know what, I skipped a step. Here's where this ice pick I have comes in, old school ice pick. You could use, you could possibly, you know what, dollar store had these clay working tools, 2 of them for $1. It's got this thing is no joke sharp. You could use that. These are two at the dollar store. I imagine I'll use this for something someday, but it's almost too wide. I might file that down to an edge, and sometimes you want to clean paint out from between things. But anyhow, that's a decent point. Dollar store find. I like my ice pick. It is sharp, but this is the perfect size. I'm going to go in here into the cross boards and just poke in a couple of nail holes at each end. Be careful with this one because it's already pretty flimsy. It won't be once I clear coat everything, but use little details, little nail holes. Give those little details. Add some authenticity, if you can see there. Yep, I like it. Okay, on to my handle. Now, I think for this one, I just want a really simple. I'm going to do a really simple rope handle. I'll show you what I do there. So I have this stuff. It is bead or the cord. It's the lightest weight. It's the 10-pound hemp cord from Michael's. I'm sure Hobby Lobby, whatever craft place has it. 10 pound. It's the smallest. It's the smallest of the hemp cord, which really makes, I think, perfect scale rope for minifigures. This 10-pound hemp cord is, I think, perfect scale size to be rope for my builds, which I like. So again, 10-pound hemp cord. It comes on this thing. You remove it from this thing, and it's just all. It's not like this isn't great. Maybe there's a better method for organizing. But this had 4 on it, so I removed one of them and just wrapped it around a piece of foam and put a slit in it that holds it, like so. So when I'm not using it, just piece of cake, problem solved. I wrapped it around there, so this is what I work from. I don't need much of it. A little bit. Trim it off. Reattach, so on and so forth. Piece of cake. Now, I'm going to take my black wash, which I, again, got my recipe from Jeremy over at Black Magic Craft. It's the ink and it's a little pricier. There are cheaper ways to do it, but man, this is the best wash. He has a video. Maybe I'll put a link in the description if I can find it. But this is the wash he uses or showed how to make. So it's what I use and I love it. It's great. I'm going to take my hemp cord. I'm just going to dip it in that wash. I'm going to squeeze out all of it. Well, obviously not all of it. I'm just staining here. I don't need this to be. And you can maybe, I don't know if you can pick up the difference on camera there. You can see here's the white hemp cord and here's the now washed rope. And it just gives it a gray, very faint gray, but it looks just like old rope to me. Yeah, that's it. I am going to take that part. I am going to make a little loop like so, and I'm going to tie that loop into a knot. And I want the loop, when the knot is tight, I want the loop to be a scale, roughly scale size, what you just like a rope pull, rope handle. So I'm going to keep sliding that knot down towards the loop because I want to keep the loop about that size. That's a good size for a, that's a good scale size for what I have here. So keep, tug a little bit, pull the knot down, tug a little bit, pull the knot down. Keep pulling the knot down toward that loop. So if I tighten it up here, I have this long loop. So tug a little, pull it down. I'm pretty close now, so I can really pull that knot down and tighten it down. And I have this loop here with a knot at the end. Let's see if you can see my little loop in the shadow. Little knot, little loop. I'm going to snip off. I'll keep the knot. I want the knot. The knot is what I'm going to use to glue it down with, but I'm going to snip off the ends. And now I just have the tiniest little rope handle that I will hot glue right where I want my handle to be on the front of my door. I'm just placing it now to get an idea of, I like the location. Now that looks too close. That's too close in. Maybe I will stick it right out here on the edge. Yeah, that works. Okay. So this has got to be kind of a quick move because I don't want a ton of hot glue and I don't want it to cool before I tack it down. So I'll give a little, tiny little bead of hot glue and tack it right down where I want it at. Press it down in to that hot glue. While it's not completely cooled down yet, I'll go in with some tweezers and I'm just going to pull out the excess hot glue. I can get in there close, and there's hot glue that came out from the side of the handle. I can get in there pretty close and pull that out. Just to clean that up so I don't have a lot of hot glue down, being shiny and funny looking. This piece is being sticky. Come on, baby. Oh. But the problem there is now I want to be careful because I don't want to pull the paint off of the door by removing that hot glue. I suppose I could use tacky glue or, you know, whatever other glue, but I like hot glue. It's quick, it's easy, and it looks great. And there's my little handle, my little pull. I've got another handle style that I really like that I'll show you at another time, but that is essentially my door. Now, when I finish my build, again, as you can see on this example, I did my rock, I did my door. I go in and so this stonework was all very, you know, much brighter than this. But down towards the bottom, you know, that green that gets in the stone starts working its way up the stone. There's grime at the bottom of the door, right? So this is an old door, but it still looks pretty clean. So I will need to grind this up, and I will show you how I do that, obviously. But as for now, the door is essentially done. Now I'm probably going to frame it out. I don't have any door frame. Let's use, you know, this is really wide. This is a piece from another. But I'll build a frame around it, frame it in. Again, as you can see here, I have my door. I just tacked this frame on around it that I made from more aged wood, the door jamb, whatever. You know, and here's the little house I'm working on. So I'll just stick that right to the side, and then build the door frame around it, and then put all my stonework around that. I may have to take, being that this is so small, that door really is standing out there very far, so I may yet still take off. In fact, I'll do that right now. I'm going to remove some of that back of that because I don't want it to be that thick. I don't want it to have that much of a profile on the side of the house. So I'm going to remove a bunch of that backing because it's all stuck together now, so it's pretty solid. So I've removed all that, so now the door isn't has such a deep profile. I may even take more off, honestly. It doesn't have to be very thick at this point. But there you go. There's our little door for our little tiny house. Okay.